Oh, the House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Great God, you embody true wisdom, for you know all things, and from your perspective of eternity, you understand all circumstances. As creator and sustainer of the universe, you have incomparable power. You embody love in your intentions toward human beings. I pray for those gathered here in this place. I thank you for their willingness to serve the citizens of Minnesota. Help them bear the great burden they have agreed to carry. Help them always to keep in mind the welfare of the people of Minnesota. May they understand and demonstrate servanthood as they fulfill their roles here. Help them to respect the trust imbued in them by the electorate of this state. I pray that you may grant them wisdom. Help them to be well informed on those issues about which they are making decisions, but not to be guided by knowledge alone. True wisdom recognizes the complexities in the situation and realizes simple solutions will not work. Help them to do what is right in every point of decision, both personally and professionally. Assist them in showing compassion. I believe they are caring people, or they would not agree to serve in this role. Help them to stay focused and in every situation to consider the impact their decisions might have on individual people with names, faces, and stories. We recognize we have differences of opinion. These are men and women of integrity who nevertheless live by strong convictions. We give thanks for the system that allows for differences of opinion and the checks and balances provided by our system of government. God, help them to use good skills of listening to one another and seriously considering what those with whom they differ are saying. Give them a spirit of unity and cooperation for maximum accomplishment. Help them to respect their differences of opinion, and most of all, to be respectful toward their fellow legislators. I pray for balance in their lives. They all have lives outside this arena. They have other concerns besides their work here. Protect their families while they are away from home. I give you thanks for the sacrifices these men and women make to serve in this capacity. Specifically for today, I pray that you help them accomplish the agenda laid out for them. Give them strength when they grow weary and the ability to persevere when things do not go smoothly. Most of all, we pray that they would embody your purposes when you establish the principle of government, to reward and protect those who do good and to limit those who do evil. We thank you for hearing these prayers today and answering according to your will. Amen.
The chaplain for today's session is Reverend Rick Walston, Marian Church of Christ, Rochester, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 88th Session, 2013, 31st day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Thursday, April 4th, 2013.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Comparison reports. There is a copy of this order of business on each member's desk. If there is no objection, those motions will prevail. Hearing no objections, the motions prevail and the substitutions will be made. Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business is placed on each member's desk. If there is no objection, the reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. Second reading of House files.
Second reading, House File 285.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 978.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 1138.
Second reading. Second reading of Senate files.
Second reading, Senate File 166.
Second reading.
Second reading, Senate File 319.
Second reading.
Second reading, Senate File 521.
Second reading.
Second reading, Senate File 716.
Second reading. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The chief clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction and first reading of House File 1720 through 1742.
First reading, House File 1720 to 1742.
Messages from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following Senate files herewith transmitted. Senate Files 28 and 442, signed Joanne Zoff, Secretary of the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following Senate file herewith transmitted. Senate File 1086, signed Joanne M. Zoff, Secretary of the Senate.
First reading of Senate files.
Introduction and first reading of Senate File 28, an act relating to taxation. The bill has been referred to the Committee on Taxes. Introduction and first reading of Senate File 442, an act relating to human services. Legally moves that Senate File 442 and House File 543, now in the General Register, be referred to the Chief Clerk for comparison.
If there is no objection, so ordered.
Introduction and first reading of Senate File 1086, an act relating to human rights. Dorholt moves that Senate File 1086, House File 1181, now in the General Register, be referred to the Chief Clerk for comparison.
Hearing no objection, so ordered. Calendar for the day. The first bill on the calendar for the day is House File 527. The clerk will report the bill.
House File 527, number 1 on the calendar for today, an act relating to commerce.
The author of the bill, Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I've been in the committee a lot, Mr. Speaker. This is a clarification bill. House File 527 is. God darn it! Now they're paying attention to me, Mr. Speaker. I thought we could snooker one by them. Actually, this is the folks from Western Union and MoneyGram came to me after we passed a bill last year to help protect seniors and others from scams that use wire fraud or wire transmissions as their mode of defrauding folks. And what we required was a certain warning be given when people send money. What we ended up doing was we had that apply to all transactions, and we realized afterwards with the help of MoneyGram and Western Union that in fact we were just looking at transactions that are sent to individuals and not transactions, for example, sent to a utility company as payment. Working with the original proponents of last year's bill, we figured out that Western Union and MoneyGram and other money transmitters were exactly right. That this is solely for transmissions that go through to individuals. So you'll see on the House file we added that language and it says to send money to an individual, and narrows the scope of last year's bill so that it carries out what we intended to do with it last year. It's very straightforward, passed with bipartisan, unanimous support out of committee, and I would appreciate members' support here today.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File 527.
Third reading. Any discussion of the bill? Seeing no discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 133 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 194. The clerk will report the bill.
House File 194, number 2 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to commerce.
The author of the bill, Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is on the same topic, money transmissions that are wired. In the same time frame where we learned that we needed last year's bill to have a little bit more clarification, we learned that there was greater clarity that we could bring with respect to helping to protect seniors and others against fraud that takes place as a result of wire transmissions. And I'll give you one quick anecdote, which is in September I was at a local senior citizen facility in Inver Grove Heights where I was holding a town meeting, and I asked a number of them, I told them about a situation that my parents had encountered where they got a call from a young man who ostensibly was their grandson, my son John. And when the call came, he said that he was in a hospital. He'd been injured and he was in a hospital in New York City. And he asked Grandma and Grandpa, my parents, if they could wire him some money. And they thought about it a little bit and then realized after they were talking to him that they weren't quite sure if this was truly their grandson. So they started asking him a couple of questions, and lo and behold, they realized that it was a scammer who was trying to get them to wire some money to New York City, which would undoubtedly be picked up by someone other than my son. I raised that same issue when I was talking to a local group of seniors, about 75 people, and among those 75 I described for them the scenario that had occurred, and I asked them, have any of you encountered the same sort of situation? And to a person out of all 75 people in that room, every single hand went up. Every single one they had sought or been contacted with somebody who had tried to perpetrate the same sort of scheme upon them. And that's just one scenario. There's lots of different ways that this sort of scam takes place. And I thought I was being so interesting, Mr. Speaker. But there's a variety of different scams, much more sophisticated than people think. We've all got those on our emails. You know, you've inherited a whole bunch of money from some long-lost uncle in South Africa. You just need to send them your bank account number or something like that. These have become considerably more sophisticated, now being organized out of literally by organized crime rings in Eastern Europe and North Africa. Retired Special Agent Jim Arlt from our own Department of Public Safety gave us some figures that said over 100,000 Minnesotans have been ripped off in the last couple of years to the tune of $4 or $5 million a year in losses. He also noted that it's one of Minnesota's most underreported crimes because many seniors who send money don't want to be found out by their families that they made such a mistake. And we're not talking $5,000 or $10,000 or a few $100s or anything like that. Literally, one of Representative Anderson's constituents last year sent $250,000 $250,000 in losses. Another person, I believe in Belgrade, Minnesota, had been ripped off to the tune of $800,000 or $900,000. That's the kind of money that we're talking about, and that is why AARP, and you'll see in a letter that's being passed out from AARP, their support, this is one of their top priorities this session. What this bill does is very simple. It says that when you wire money to a specific location, if that money is attempted to be picked up at a different location, then as the sender, you get notified. So if you're attempting to send money to Atlantic City, New Jersey, to an injured son or grandson, and the money is actually being picked up someplace far away from there, you would simply get notice that that money is being picked up somewhere else. And then you get to authorize whether or not the money goes through. It's that simple, and according to Special Agent Arlt and other experts, they indicate that that is a great way to stop those transactions from occurring. And we're hoping that that is not only a way to stop the transactions, but a way to catch those thieves and scammers that are ripping off senior citizens and others here in Minnesota. That's what the bill does. It's fairly straightforward, and I would appreciate your support for it.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File 194.
Third reading. Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Atkins, I'm looking at your bill, and I'm just wondering what happens if the sender doesn't leave their address, their information. Are they required to, under law, to leave that information? Or if you could just run us how that would work, what would you do if the sender didn't leave the information?
And Mr.
Representative
Speaker,
Atkins.
Representative Pepin, I appreciate the question. If I think from a practical standpoint, if the wire transmitter didn't have contact information, they obviously wouldn't be able to contact that person. I believe actually that Representative Loon has an amendment that would effectuate that concern or address that concern that I would be happy to take.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to clarify, are we taking amendments or are we on third reading?
We're on third reading.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 123 ayes and 10 noes, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 290. The clerk will report the bill.
House File 290, number 3 on the calendar for today, the first engrossment, an act relating to state government.
The author of the bill, Representative Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill, House File 290, is a modification of Minnesota's False Claims Act. If you were here in 2009, you probably voted for this. It passed on a bipartisan basis then, signed into law by Governor Pawlenty. The False Claims Act is basically an anti-fraud provision that allows Minnesota to get revenue not by raising a tax or cutting spending, but by taking advantage of those who take advantage, and that is making sure that we get a good share of money in recoveries from fraud. And as part of the inducement to pass this law was a pledge by the federal government that if we abided by certain conditions, we would get a certain bump in the recoveries that we get from fraud recoveries. All this bill does is make some technical modifications requested by the federal government in a letter some months ago and make sure that we are entitled to that money. I know of no opposition. It went through 3 committees. There was no audible or open dissent. I know of no interest group opposition. And so, members, I ask for your support. Thank you.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File 290.
Third reading. Discussion of the bill. Seeing no discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Clerk will close the roll. There being 133 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day, House File 1587. The clerk will report the bill.
House File 1587, number 4 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to insurance.
The author of the bill, Representative Halverson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House File 1587 is legislation that's aimed to provide consumers with more choices when communicating with their insurance company. It would allow, at the consumer's discretion, insurance companies to provide policies, declarations, and riders by electronic means such as an electronic account with the company or email. The other component of the bill allows insurance companies to communicate with their customers in languages other than English. And again, this is just at the request of the consumer. So this is really a pro-consumer bill. I want to thank my co-authors on the bill, Representative Zellers, Representative Hoppe. This has bipartisan support. It's got support from the Insurance Federation, the Department of Commerce, State Farm. So I ask for your support on this bill. Thank you.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File 1587.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Representative Davids.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if Representative Halverson would yield for 2 questions.
She will yield. Representative Davids.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I am generally supportive of this bill. I just have a couple questions. One is, will a policyholder be assured of getting important notices like cancellation or non-payment of premium? Is there some mechanism that assures that they will have received these emails? Because what we're doing here, members, is we're saying that instead of sending out paper policies and paper provisions, what we're doing is we're doing it by email. Representative Halverson, how can we be assured that if there's a cancellation for non-payment of premium that the person is actually notified? Will it be notified other than by electronic means? Will there be certified mail? I mean, I'm supporting the bill. I just want to see how a person maybe didn't pay their premium or the check got lost in the mail. How are they notified that they're being canceled?
Representative Halverson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Davids, the intention is that the same standard will apply, that if the communication is required to be confirmed, that they would have to have an electronic communication or some other type of confirmation from the consumer that they received that communication. So current statute requires that there be confirmation of the receipt of such communication, and that standard will be maintained.
Representative Davids.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Halverson would yield for one more question.
She will yield. Representative Davids.
And that question is, in your interpretation of this bill, does the insurance agent have any more liability for like an errors and omissions claim? Because on the application, the time of application, the client would probably sign up for electronic communication. What is the potential liability for the insurance agent if the client doesn't get some communication that they needed to have?
Representative Halverson.
Mr. Speaker and Representative Davids, I'm not aware of any specific liability that currently exists with the requirement that we have to respond if we are the consumer, that we confirm that we received the communication. So in terms of current statute, I'm not sure what liability exists on the insurance agent, and in my interpretation of the bill, this wouldn't change the responsibility of the agents.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Halverson.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Halverson yield to a question?
She will yield. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Halverson, I also am supportive of the measure. I just want to get some detail. Is this compulsory for the insurance companies upon the request of the customer that they have to have the alternate language? And if so, is there a scope as to what type of languages the insurance company would be required to provide information?
Representative Halverson.
Mr. Speaker, Representative O'Driscoll, the bill language is permissive in nature for both the consumer and the insurance company. So it allows the insurance company to communicate in languages other than in English. It does not require it. And it also requires that the changes are requested by the consumer.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Wondering if Representative Halverson would yield again.
She will yield. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Halverson, you mentioned this is permissive, and I'm wondering several things. I'm wondering what is the reason for this bill? I don't know that I've heard that there's a need. And then secondly, I'm kind of, well, anyway, that would be my question, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Halverson.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Drazkowski, the reason for the changes is that we have to, it's time to modernize our state laws. Currently, the language in the statute is written in such a way that companies have very few options with which to communicate with their customers. Most consumers are looking for alternatives to written communication, first-class mail. When I think of the way I do business in my own family, we bank online, we pay our bills online, and we even manage a lot of our health care online. And because of the way current law exists, consumers don't have those options with their insurance companies under 60A, and this just looks to modernize that and make it more accessible for consumers.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the representative will continue to yield.
She will. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Representative Halverson, is there a reason now that these companies can't communicate in these languages other than English currently? Or is there anything in law prohibiting them from doing what your bill is saying they can do?
Representative Halverson.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Drazkowski, yes, the current statute limits the ways that insurance companies can communicate currently, and the Insurance Federation, State Farm Insurance, and others were looking for this kind of ability to serve their customers better, and they need changes in state law to do it.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Halverson. I guess I was caught a little bit by one statement that you made, and I remember a bill that passed last session, too. We find ourselves from time, and maybe parts of this bill fall into that area. Apparently, there's a good part of it that doesn't, from what I heard. But I think it's important for us to remember that we don't have to have the legislature and government permitting people throughout our state to do things that they would normally do. Those freedoms exist unless the legislature, the government, comes out and writes strict or partial prohibitions. So I appreciate your qualification and discussion of the area that at least part of this bill is required to provide that flexibility, but I wonder about the rest of it. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will Representative Halverson yield for a question?
She will yield. Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Halverson. I guess my question, and I'm not that familiar with the bill, but I just want to ensure that those individuals that don't have email and don't choose not to communicate by email, it'll continue to be in the standard format that we're currently operating under.
Representative Halverson.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Howe, that's an excellent clarifying point. Yes, the choice is completely the consumer's choice for how they want it to be communicated with. So the current standard exists unless the consumer makes a change.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm wondering if Representative Halverson would yield.
She will yield. Representative Pepin.
Thank you. Representative Halverson, I'm wondering if you could explain what the repealer on the last couple sentences or last couple lines does.
Representative Halverson.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Pepin, the repealer just is part of getting our state law again modernized and taking out unnecessary language and making sure that we are providing the insurance companies and the consumers with the ability to communicate that the way that they need to.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Halverson continue to yield?
She will. Representative Pepin.
Thank you. Representative Halverson, I looked up the repealer and it says the English language shall be used in printing of all policies of insurance covering property in this state, etc., bylaws shall be printed in the English language. So this is clear that all laws or all language shall be printed in English, but your language of your bill says they can have an opportunity to print it in other languages. So to me it looks like we're repealing the requirement that it shall be in English. If you could clarify.
Representative Halverson.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Pepin, again, the repealer is just part of the additional language just makes it clear that upon the choice of the consumer, they can communicate in languages other than English. So the repealer takes the requirement for English out, and the subsequent language provides in the choice for the consumer.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Halverson. Well, members can vote how they want, but the way I read it, the new language says that insurance policies, endorsements, riders, etc. may be issued in a language other than English, and then we repeal the language that it said it shall be printed in English, and that causes me some concern, and I hope you'll all get a chance to look at this repealer in the bill before you vote. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 108 ayes and 25 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 648. The clerk will report the bill.
House File 648, number 5 on the calendar for today, the first engrossment, an act relating to commerce.
Recognize the author of the bill, Representative Davnie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. House File 648 clarifies the regulation of auto title loans. Auto title loans are similar to payday loans. In fact, we regulate them in the payday lender statute. Unfortunately, some lenders have established themselves under the industrial loan and thrift statute and are issuing auto title loans without the same consumer protections and regulations that we have in the pawnbroker statute. This simply clarifies that if you are issuing auto title loans, here's the one same set of regulations regardless of how you're chartered. We worked out some discomfort with the folks who actually loan you money to buy cars, banks, credit unions, auto dealers, and the like. There was no opposition to the bill in committee. I ask for your support.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File 648.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. clerk will close the roll. There being 106 ayes and 27 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 129. The clerk will report the bill.
House File 129, number 6 on the calendar for the day, the first engrossment, an act relating to commerce.
The author of the bill, Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Consumer protection theme today on the House floor. This bill is no different, offers strong consumer protections for folks that are going through governing foreclosure issues. This bill protects homeowners against loan modification scams. It closes a loophole in Chapter 325N. It's been through the Commerce Committee, Civil Law Committee, Judiciary, Policy, and Finance. There's been no opposition. I ask for your support.
There's no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File 129.
Third reading. Any discussion to the bill? Seeing no discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. Rosenthal votes aye. There being 132 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Reports from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration. Murphy E. from the Committee on Rules, pursuant to Rule 121 and 333, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for today for Wednesday, April 10th, 2013. House File numbers 1378 and 504.
Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions and resolutions online and at the House desk. If there is no objection, those motions, we'll take action on those motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail.
Falk moves that House File 879, now on the General Register, be re-referred to the Committee on Ways and Means.
Representative Falk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chair Carlson asked to take a look at this in Ways and Means, so we're sending it over to him.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed no. Motion prevails.
Mahoney moves that House File 1359, now on the General Register, be re-referred to the Committee on Jobs and Economic Development, Finance, and Policy.
Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and that's my bill. It has to go back to my committee. At this particular time, it looks like the Workers' Comp Advisory Council has come up to an agreement with labor and the industry agreeing on some issues, and we are going to take a look at it and then hopefully move it out and help both sides have a win this year.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor say aye. All opposed no. The motion prevails.
Hansen moves that House File 1710 be recalled from the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources Policy and re-referred to the Committee on Governmental Operations.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House File 1710 deals with membership on the Environmental Quality Board. It was referred to Environmental Policy. It should have gone to Government Operations. I've talked with both chairs and they agree.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed no. Motion prevails. Announcements. Representative Doubt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I guess I'm wondering if the Majority Leader would yield for a question.
She will yield. Representative Doubt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Murphy, it's been brought to our attention in a couple of instances that these omnibus bills seem to be moving quite rapidly without an appropriate amount of notice to the public and to the minority party. So I just wanted to ask you about that. And I know the intent when we passed these rules was to have increased transparency so the public and everybody could participate and see what the amendments were. The two specific instances that I'm curious about, it appears that the Environment Ag Finance Bill was actually just posted to the website at 10:24 last night. Looks like the committee pre-filing deadline will be today at 6, and they're not even doing a walkthrough of the bill until tomorrow, and then expected to vote it out of committee the same day. So obviously this provides some concern. We haven't seen the spreadsheet on the bill. This is a 181-page amendment that'll be adopted. It seems to me that the right thing to do would be to have the walkthrough of the bill, look at the spreadsheet, and then have a deadline and a vote on amendments after that happens so that members really can familiarize themselves with the bill, and then also the public can participate in the process and influence their members as well. So, I'm wondering if you feel that that's a reasonable request and if we can make some arrangements to make that happen. The other one is the Transportation Finance Bill, which it's my understanding has still not been posted yet. And I think that they're actually planning to take that one up on Wednesday, it looks like, with a deadline tomorrow. So, hopefully we think that, increased transparency is a good thing, and I'm wondering if you think that those are reasonable requests and if we can make some adjustments.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Doubt. I am grateful for your attention to the fact that we are finally moving the budget bills from committee through Ways and Means and to the floor. Of course, these bills represent months now of work as bills introduced by members have been heard in committee, various committees in fact, and then become the substance of an omnibus bill. And so while a bill is being posted, and we're going to have a look at it, when it goes online, and it'll be marked up in committee, it is, of course, the result of months of work by the committees. And I am grateful that we are finally here at this point in time moving forward with a budget for Minnesota which represents a vision for Minnesota, and I'm grateful for all the work the committees have done. And I know that the next 6 weeks are going to be very busy for this legislature. So I will consider your request and talk with the chairs. But I'm quite confident that the legislation that we're going to see coming out of the committees is going to be a representation of work that has already been heard in multiple committees and heard in the committees that represent the work of that omnibus that bill.
Representative Doubt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the answer, Representative Murphy, but I'm not sure you got exactly to the point that I was getting at. And I'm taking you at your word that we wanted increased transparency when we adopted these rules. I'll bring to your attention Rule 6.20, and it basically says, as far as practicable, the chair of a committee must give 3 days' notice of the date, time, and place, and agenda for each meeting. And I think you've said on the floor in the past that I think we want to try to stick to that as much as possible. Now, I understand that that's not always possible, but in the case of the Environment Ag Finance Bill, I mean, members are getting about 18 hours. I guess I'm not doing the math here in my head, but 18 hours on a 181-page bill. They're given 18 hours to come up with amendments. My question is, did you think that was reasonable?
Representative Murphy.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And Representative Doubt, it is, again, the representation of months of work by many members of this legislature. I will say that it is a far higher standard than one that we experienced after the government shutdown in 2011, when I recall getting the Health and Human Services bill about an hour before I was asked to vote on it, and that, of course, was a bill that was negotiated behind closed doors in a locked Capitol. So there have been times when pieces of legislation have moved through this legislature and the public has not been able to see it. That is not the case. That is not the case at all as this legislature is moving forward with these budget bills. Again, The budget has been, the bills that are comprising the omnibus bills are pieces of work of many members of the legislature. They've been heard in committee, they've been aired in committee, they're going to comprise now the omnibus bill, and they're going to move through in a way that the public is able to see and participate.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, I appreciate that, Representative Murphy. Again, you still haven't answered my question, unless I'm led to believe that you think it's reasonable that the public get less than 18 hours. I mean, this bill was posted on a Sunday night at 10:24 p.m. A Sunday night, 10:24. Most people have gone to bed and aren't even checking email after that time. Okay? Amendments are due at 6 p.m. today for a committee hearing that will happen tomorrow, where we'll take up a 181-page bill in one committee hearing and pass that out. And that's the committee really that should have the jurisdiction over that bill. I mean, it's an omnibus bill. I know it may go to another committee, but I'm taking you at your word that you said that you wanted the work of this body to happen for the most part in committee. Unfortunately, the unforeseen circumstance here is, or I shouldn't even say unforeseen, we should see this. It should be in bright lights if we can't tell that what this is going to do, the consequence this is going to bring us, is amendments are going to come here to the floor and the work's going to happen here on the floor. And what that does is it binds up this body and the work that we do here. So I think it's probably we need to take another look at this. And I know we've got some big bills that are coming through, and we've been waiting anxiously. I know that I think we're in our, halfway through this session, a little more than halfway through, and we've been waiting anxiously to see the Democrats' budget. We have not seen that yet in complete, and we're anxious to see that. We're anxious to see what those ramifications are on the hardworking taxpayers of Minnesota, and we hope to have the same priorities as you, which is protect them and also to grow Minnesota's economy and to grow jobs. But unfortunately, this doesn't help us in the minority or the public in the state of Minnesota participate in our process. It looks like, and frankly, this was my worst fear when we were passing these rules. It looks to me like my worst fear is coming true, that we've got one party that's controlling all of state government, and somewhere, at some time, there's some negotiations that are happening other than in front of the public eye. So we're putting together bills. I mean, and I'll ask you one more question as a follow-up, if she would yield.
She'll yield. Representative Dowd.
So you're saying that all of the provisions in all of the omnibus bills will have been heard in committee already. So there's nothing new in any of the omnibus bills. I guess I'd like that commitment. That's what I heard you say, so I'd like that commitment, that there will be nothing new in any of the omnibus bills that hasn't been heard in a bill previously in committee.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Dowd, I said that the bills will represent the work of the committee. And of course, members participating in the committees have been working alongside their colleagues now for months. So really, we should be able to anticipate, and this is my fourth term in the legislature, we should be able to anticipate the pieces of legislation that are going to likely be in an omnibus bill and be prepared for that. So when we get to this point in the legislature, and of course, this is the time in the legislature when we have to put in extra time and extra hours to review the bills and make sure we're drafting the amendments that we believe are important so we can do the work in the committee, just as you suggested. So I would expect that the omnibus bills are going to represent a lot of the work that's already been done in the committee and shouldn't be unfamiliar to the members.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Majority Leader, I guess I didn't hear that commitment. So what you're saying is that these omnibus bills that we're going to have, and the public's going to have less than 18 hours to look at before the amendment deadline, may have things in them that are brand new. This may be the chairs may be springing brand new stuff up in these bills. So they really aren't bills that have been dealt with in committee before. And I don't know how long it takes to read a 181-page bill, but I have a feeling this actually might be one of the smaller omnibus bills that we deal with this session. Some of the other ones might be much larger, and I would hate if we're setting a precedence. What this means, and members, I'll call this to your attention, what this means is that we're actually having an amendment deadline before a walkthrough on a bill and before the public can give 1 second of testimony. The amendment deadline will happen a day prior to a walkthrough, seeing a spreadsheet with numbers of the impacts of the bill, and before 1 second of public testimony can happen. How are we instilling public confidence in the process that we take part in here in the House? We're sent here to represent the public, and we want to do that. We want to work on these bills. But members certainly need the opportunity to offer amendments to bills. And I'm going to take you back, Madam Majority Leader, to your own words when we passed these rules, which was that you wanted transparency. Where's the transparency in this? You're literally having an amendment deadline before the walkthrough on the bill and before the public can give 1 second of testimony on a bill. This was my worst fear. And very sincerely, Madam Majority Leader, I and my members want to work with you on these bills. So this is a big mistake. I think you're making a very big mistake in pushing these bills through. And I don't want to use words like ramming them through, but that's what this looks like. So I'm going to ask you very kindly, it doesn't look like you're going to change your mind on this one. Maybe the chair of this committee can see the light and change the schedule. We're just talking about one more committee, a day or two later, so that the deadline can actually be after the walkthrough, after the time when we can actually ask the departments and their representatives about the impacts of these bills. We don't get to ask the authors of these bills any questions, but we have to have our amendments in prior to any of that happening. That certainly is not the definition of transparency. And when you said that was what we were going to get out of these rules, was increased transparency, I'm not likely to trust anything else you're saying, because this doesn't look like transparency to me. So I'm just going to say, Madam Majority Leader, and I'm not going to continue this on because I'm not trying to run the clock out, but this is a very important point. So I'm just going to ask you, please make a change in this schedule. Schedule one more hearing that will allow an amendment deadline to happen after the walkthrough, and give us and give the public that same respect on the rest of the omnibus bills as they come forward. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Other announcements? Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 12 p.m. Wednesday, April 10th, 2013.
Representative Murphy moves that when the House adjourn today, it adjourn until 12 noon, Wednesday, April 10th, 2013. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. Representative Murphy.
I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Murphy moves that the House do now adjourn. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The motion prevails. The House stands adjourned until 12 noon, Wednesday, April 10th, 2013.